Hey everybody, welcome to episode 59 of Making It. I'm Bob Clagett, here with Jimmy Diresta.
Hello everybody.
And David Picciuto.
Hello everybody.
Hello everybody. What's going on?
Just hanging out.
Hanging out.
Recording a podcast.
Trying to. It's taking us a while to get started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy does this little count at the beginning of each one. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's crazy fun, I think.
Every time I'm supposed to click record on the count of 3, and every time Bob says 3, I hit record. I can't help myself. When he says on the count of 3, and because he said the word 3, I hit record.
Yeah. I'm a troublemaker, always.
Yeah. So, Bob, what are you working on?
Oh, I have to go first, huh?
Yeah. You like that?
Yeah, not really, but I'll go first. Finishing up the video for the music project that I mentioned last week, which I'm still not going to talk about. But we're working on the video for that today. And then currently working on a mute switch for next week's video. It's a mute switch for a microphone. So basically from doing this show, I realized that we all have to go on screen and click the little microphone button when we need to cough. And so now I'm going to have a foot switch that I can just press down, cough, and then let go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. What are you going to be doing with your hands while you're stepping on the mute button?
Like this, just waving them around, letting everybody know I'm coughing. Hey, everybody, I'm going to cough. You can't hear it, but it's going to happen. Yeah, so it's actually really simple. It's just a switch and, cutting an audio signal. It's actually grounding it out. But so I decided to make it a little box out of hardwood, and it's top and bottom are aluminum, and, just tried to do something different with the container, because that's really all it is a container. So.
Awesome.
That's cool.
That's what I'm doing. And then just reorganizing my office shop, trying to get things more usable and make some more floor space.
I looked at your video today. It's actually really cool. The arcade cabinet with the decals and stuff. It looks amazing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, very happy with it.
The rubber edge banding really dresses it up. Yeah,
I think it really... Originally, I got black for that, for the
orange
banding.
Good.
Yeah, but I'm so glad that I was able to switch it in time. I ordered the black, and then that night I was like, you're not even going to be able to see that. Yeah. So I wrote the guy an email, and I was like, if you haven't shipped it yet, please switch it to orange. And he was like, yeah, no problem. So he shipped it out, and then I realized that the orange was more expensive, and he didn't say anything about it. He just swapped it out and sent it. It was really cool of him. But yeah, by the time this show is out, the last video for the arcade will be up. So it's nice to have that out of the way, completely done. But,
awesome.
What about you, Jimmy? What are you working on?
I just got back from Arizona. I was in Arizona for the vortex, the polar vortex. I was in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, thankfully.
Is that like the name of a party that you were at?
What, the polar vortex? That was the party that occurred in New York when it was like 10 degrees below zero.
Gotcha.
The polar vortex. Did you get that in Ohio?
No. Nope.
Oh, really? No, it was like sub-zero. Even actually, it was so cold. I got back here yesterday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And at about 10, I went to take a shower, and I turned the shower on, and it was trickling out until it finally came out full speed, which means that there was a frozen pipe somewhere, like in the exterior wall of the building somewhere.
Ooh,
so that's what happens when you turn it on, and it just trickles. And I turned the hot water on, and the hot water melted whatever the freeze was as it came through the pipe. But I was in Arizona working for George Dickel Whiskey, doing another live building event, and I built a bar on location out of pallets, and then the top was a big slab of ponderosa pine that I found at a place out there called Porter Barn Lumber. If anybody's in that area, Porter Barn Lumber is actually a really great spot. I didn't visit it myself, but I looked at it online, and I called in, and they hooked me up with a piece that the guys went and picked up for me. 7 foot by 2 foot by 3 inch slab is the bar top, and I carved the logo in it and stuff. There's some stuff on Instagram, but by the time this podcast airs, I probably will have finished the video and aired the video. So as soon as I got back, which was yesterday morning, yesterday being Monday morning, I had to get jumping on my make video. So I made a table saw sled concept that came to me over the weekend. And it has the 45 bevel cutter integrated into the sled. Sometimes we have one sled for one and one for another. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I made one sled that has both of them in it, and with like a couple of screws, you can convert it to the other one and then go back to the regular flat sled. So it's just an idea that I wanted to play around with. It might not be the first and only time I make this. I'm probably going to keep improving it. And so that's going to be my make video. It's on my Patreon page, maybe it'll be out by the time this podcast airs. And that's it. Just coming up with new ideas. I just got my money to begin my kindergarten classroom, so I'm going to go tomorrow morning and get supplies and begin working on that. And the job's been stalled a little bit, only just because of budgets and stuff. But now it's on the move. And that's it. Just jamming away.
Are you going to be doing videos or taking pictures of the classroom?
Yeah, there's gonna be a couple probably of small little segments of it. It probably won't be one big large video, but it'll be like I'm building cubbies and closets and tables and stuff. So I'll probably break it into a couple different videos that could stand alone.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I had a question about the bar build. So when you build, you've done that a few times where you've built those on location. What's the process like for going somewhere where you don't have any of your tools, you don't have any of the materials? How do you set that up beforehand to have everything you need to be able to build it? Well,
the guys that go and they do like the forward team, they go and set up a booth because it was Arizona Cocktail Week, so there's a booth so people can come in and taste. It's one of those things like, they have a thing, I don't know if it comes to your city, called Meatopia, where you pay at the door and you come in and every booth just gives away food, because you pay a hefty price at the door. And at the same thing here, you pay a hefty price at the door, maybe $50, and you get to go around and taste everybody's booze. So there's no money exchanging hands, but there are booths and tents, just like a typical fair. And they have me in the corner. So they come a couple of days ahead to set up the whole entire tent. And so I know they're going to have some tools. But I always go with a suitcase full of at least a sharp handsaw, a hand plane, couple sets of screw gun drills, just the various basic essentials that I could fit into my carry-on. I don't carry that on, but it is the size of a carry-on suitcase. I check it, of course. And I bring a set of chisels and anything that I think I could, be creative with. And I go there with the understanding that at the very least I could handsaw and screw this whole thing together, or handsaw and nail it together. And so that's my thought going in, is that if there's no power tools on site, I could at least just handsaw everything. And in this, I handsaw with like a little just cross-cut handsaw. I cut probably about 90% of the cuts. And it was funny. I when you see the video, I cut about 90% of the cuts, and then I was just exhausted from using the handsaw. It was such a pain in the butt. I looked down and there's a battery-operated circular saw that's been sitting at my feet the whole time. I didn't notice. The guys, I didn't know they got it because I just saw screw gun around. They went, and when they got there, they bought a kit. When they got there, they went and bought a Ryobi kit, and I didn't realize half the kit was under the edge of the stage. So if I'd have known, I probably would have used it sooner. Anyway, but I always like getting in practice with the handsaw because I always feel, if you ever, at the very least, at least you have that skill.
Yeah.
And so with the handsaw and a drill, screw gun, and some chisels to carve the logo in, I was able to make this thing out of pallets. And, I go in with the idea of everybody has the understanding of I'm literally building this thing. When all is said and done, I probably spent about 5 to 7 hours on it, and that's it. All the other time is spent talking, chatting to people. People want to talk about it. So, in the video, you'll see me working relatively quickly and hard, but there's lots of interruptions. Hey, come over here. I want you to meet somebody. So I'm in the middle of something and I walk away for an hour. I come back. It's a lot of socializing, which you don't see in the video, but so all in, it's about 5 hours worth of work. So when you look at it and it looks like a little, I always tell everybody, how much would this be? They always ask me. I was like, if it was in my shop, it would be thousands of dollars. In this condition, don't judge me on this particular piece because I just built this in a couple hours. Because everybody all day long walks up and is like, oh, can you build me one of those? How much would it be? What's your card? I'm like, I live in New York. And they're like, oh, forget it. Hey, can you build me one of these? How much? When can you be done? I said, I live in New York. They go, oh, forget it. I have that conversation 50 times each day for 2 days.
You should just set up a sign. I'm in New York. Don't bother me.
Yeah. Well, the guys there, they're always, a couple fans came out to see me. Ian came out. Ian and his wife, Brittany, came out. He's a fan of ours. And, he's in the movie. When you see the movie, he's going to be the one helping me carry the big slab out of the background into the foreground. And a couple people at night. You guys remember Big Phil from WIA? He was starting a channel. He's from Canada. I bumped into him at the Jack Daniels party. He calls my name, and I was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" So it's funny. A guy we met in WIA, and it was nice to be out in New York during the polar vortex, and it's always fun to build in the sun. So. Look forward to that video. Should be good.
Awesome.
Nice.
David, what about you?
I'm still working on my pair of corner cabinets. I keep running into things that delay it. I thought I had the right hinges that I needed. The doors are inset and it has a face frame, and the hinges that I have are for inset face frame, but it sticks out too far on the side because my face frame is only 1.75 inches wide. So I'm like, ugh. And then so I went back to the store and found some that'll work, and they sell them in the plate and the hinge are two different pieces that you purchase. And they didn't have the plate, so like we'll order it and it'll be here in a couple of days. So that delayed the project a little bit. This was going to be just like a quick cabinet for my music room, and then I decided to get all fancy and use contrasting woods, and I started etching glass with it with the laser engraver, and my test piece worked great, and then when I went to actually go etch it, it messed up.
Oh, bummer.
How did it mess up? Like, what happened?
So the test piece that I engraved, the graphic was only like 3 inches long, and that worked fine. On the actual graphic, on the real piece of glass, is 11 inches long. And my laser got knocked out of alignment. I just moved it from my office to my basement. And so when it gets knocked out of alignment, it's perfectly fine on the left side, but as it gets to the right side of the bed, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter until it doesn't show up. So now I have to go order another piece of glass, which is, that takes a day for them to turn that around. And so I keep running into all these little issues, but it's looking really good. I'm really happy with it.
Awesome. The design looked cool.
Thank you.
I haven't seen the actual piece, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Glowforge coming out, because it sounds like that alignment issue and things like that won't be a problem.
Yeah.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. And so what Bob is talking about.
The Glowforge, sorry to cut it off. When does the Glowforge come out?
I think they're shipping, they hope to ship in June. They started shipping some already to the very early adopters, with knowing that there could be some bugs. But the general public, I think it's starting in June. At least that's what they're targeting. But what Bob is referring to is, like, most laser engravers, laser cutters have a set of mirrors which beam the laser all around to the head. And I believe the Glowforge laser is actually built into the head, so there's nothing to get knocked out of alignment. There's no mirrors or anything. So that's one of the advantages.
Something to that effect. I don't remember. The guy who started it was telling us all about it when we were in Chicago. And I can't remember the specifics, but he said something about the fact that all the pieces that normally get out of alignment are forced into the same piece. Like, they're all one thing. So they can't individually get messed up out of alignment. Like, the whole thing moves together. And since it's one piece, you don't really have to align it. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see when we get it and see, I personally don't have a frame of reference because I've never used another laser. So I'm just assuming it'll be good, but I won't have a bad experience to base it off of. So, anyway. So you guys want to do brainstorming this week that we're going to do?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So we'll pick up kind of brainstorming, but before we do that, I want to talk about email for a minute. And we gotten some interesting emails this week, and I'm not picking on anybody. That's not the purpose of this. But I always talk about managing the expectations of other people. That's something that has become like a big part of what I'm doing now. Doing this full time, creating content, putting it out there for people. I think anybody that does that, or anybody that creates anything, is, faced with the expectations of the people who consume what they create. And those expectations are hardly ever the same as yours are as the creator. So I've been dealing with that a lot and learning more about that. And that gives me some cool perspective on, like, how important is it when I get a bad comment or a good comment? Like, how important is that really? Because it's really based on that person's expectation. So we got an email this week from a guy, and we ended up having a conversation. He was very nice. I'm not trying to be negative about him, but as one side of a conversation. His email went something like, I really enjoyed the brainstorming episode you guys did. That's what I wish, or that's what I expected all of your episodes to be like, but they're not. They're all like this one that I didn't like. And, I told him, I'm sorry that you're not really enjoying the show. It's not for everybody. okay, But his expectation, because the name of the show is Making It, is that we should talk about, well, I don't really know what his expectation is, that we should talk about making things only, or that we should talk about like the mechanics of, using tools, or I don't know. Mm-hmm. The three of us have a different expectation as to why we're doing this, what we talk about, what we get out of it, what we can give out of it, right? So we have our own understanding of that. So when we got this email from this guy, it was a little like, oh, well, that's a shame that somebody doesn't like what we're doing for whatever reason, because it's not what they think. But like I said, he was nice about it. It wasn't like a negative conversation. So I moved on past that. And then we got like 3 other emails this week that were like the polar opposite of that sentiment. And I don't even have them in front of me. I'm not going to read them or anything. But they were essentially like, we love the show. The fact that you guys talk about the problems that you're facing and the things that you like and the things that inform who you are and all this different stuff, like it makes a difference in how I'm looking at my work. That's awesome.
Those are my favorite. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Makes you stop and think, this is crazy what we're doing. Yeah.
And so, and the reason I bring all that up is just to frame it for the people who are listening. For whatever you create, here's a making it point. Okay. Whatever you make, there is somebody out there that's going to have an effect on. And some people are not going to be affected by what you're doing because they have a different expectation for what you're putting out. But other people out there are going to be affected in the way that you want them to be affected by what you're doing. So don't be, down on yourself if you don't reach everybody, if not everybody's into it. Or, in fact, there was another email that was like, how do you guys deal with when you create something for a client and they reject it? They don't like the final product, like how do you deal with that? And I think it's into the same category here. If you create something for someone and it doesn't meet their expectation, like you have to figure out how to deal with it. Anyway, I'm saying all this stuff to encourage people who are making anything to not be discouraged if not everything is a home run with every single person, because it's probably a home run with somebody, or at least it's a first base with somebody. You know what I mean? It's there is positive that comes out of it.
Well said. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
It's also, just to be clear, when we came up with the name Making It, we use that name as a metaphor for making it in life, making it in the community that we're in, making it on YouTube, making it in your chosen profession. So it's a metaphor all around the world of hand making stuff. So making it has multiple meanings. It's not literally about brainstorming and making stuff. It's about everything that goes with it.
Yeah. And I mean, the good thing is, like, at least in the podcast world, there are podcasts. Well, I mean, YouTube is the same thing. There are pieces of content that cover just about every approach to everything.
Yeah.
So, there are other shows that are specifically about woodworking that are really good at talking about woodworking. And there are other ones that are about whatever, and they're really good at that thing. But those people are not in place to be us. We are not in place to be those people. There's content for everybody for different reasons. So anyway, I hope that's encouraging, at least to somebody out there who's making something, whether it's content or whether it's furniture or whether it's sewing or I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter, but be encouraged. All right, I'm done with that. Unless you guys have anything else for it.
No, I think you said everything that I wanted to say, so. Yeah.
Cool. Brainstorming. Let's do some more ideas if you want to.
Yeah, let's do it. What do you got, Bob? You go first. Throw one out there.
I just talked.
Keep it going.
Got the mic.
All right. So I got 4 things left on my list that we didn't talk about last time. One is a pedal board. So I've been really wanting to get back into playing music lately, and pedal board for my guitars. I have tons of guitar pedals, like way more than any person should have. And I have a really large old school pedal board that I made that's like a case, and so the whole top comes off, and then you have all the pedals on the inside on 2 different tiers, and there's power that runs through it and all that stuff. So there's a bunch of different designs that are out there to make them, but I'd like to do my version of that is really, it has to hold a bunch. It needs to be very lightweight. and it needs to be kind of portable, not terribly portable, because I don't really play out anywhere anymore. But the big thing is like it needs to be big and lightweight. But in the past, if I've made them from wood, they've been at that size, they're not really strong enough. So do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I do. A couple years ago, I made one. I don't have it with me, but I have this. I don't know what you call these types of cases, but you can see this on the camera, Bob. But I got this from Harbor Freight.
Oh yeah,
And
like a flight case, suitcase thing.
And they cost like $20, and they come in a couple different sizes. So I made a pedal board that fits in there, which is great for travel because I can pull it right out and then plug it in, and then my guitar cords also fit on top. So everything is in this nice little compact case. And pedals are weird because some of them have the power on the back, some of them have the power on the side, some of them only require battery power, and then there are like some Russian ones where the in and out are actually switched, and it's really
I have that big muff pedal. It does,
yes, exactly. Right. So I made one that was very specific, and it would only hold these pedals. But I committed to this series of pedals in this order, and I stuck with that for a long time. Now, I'm actually going to make another one. I'm not going to do a video on it because it's very specific to what I'm doing. But are you going to try to make yours so you can swap things out and move things around?
Yeah, because that's the way I've always played. Is I like to be able to reorder, create the sound through the order of the pedals and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I mean, like mine now is probably 3.5 feet long and about 18 inches deep. Yeah. So there's 2 tiers of pedals in there. I mean, there's a lot more than I need for sure. But and I'd like to keep it at that because I end up kind of I use it in a different way than like all on or all at once, So. Mm-hmm.
A funny thing, when Dave and I brainstorm, we always come up with like ridiculous solutions that aren't necessarily the solution, but could lead you somewhere. And I just pictured you standing in a ring at your feet, a ring, like a 5-foot diameter ring. And all around the ring are all the different pedals you need. So and it spins to the front of you, like you might know, like maybe you do a foot move and then like the one spins to you and then spins away. That's completely ridiculous. But could you imagine like if you're doing your own like Star Wars video and they have that like special effect at the bottom of your foot where your pedal spins to the one, or it's like a big donut and only the pedal you need reveals itself and then you click on it, then it spins away.
Oh, nice.
It's just a thought. But even if it was like a semicircle around you, which obviously isn't extremely conducive to traveling with, but if it was a semicircle then opened up into a donut, so it closes ka-chunk like this and it's like a bear trap and then it opens up into a circle. These are all the things I'm just
even a quarter circle that opened into a half to give you like the halfway around. So maybe it folds in half to like just kind of a curved piece. Huh.
That was just what I was envisioning while we were talking. But then also I was thinking of if you found something really cool to put it in. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is an old guitar case, right? If it's all in, like you open up a guitar case and all your things are there, everybody would be like, oh my God, that's so cool. But what if there was some other thing that it could be? Yeah. Like if it was like, it looked like a snowboard, like shoulder strap. I just traveled and everyone's lugging a snowboarder. I'm like, can't you rent those things? Everybody's dragging a snowboard with them to the airport. So if it looked, I don't know, a snowboard case is so awkward looking, but just something cool that like maybe it's an old record player. None of these are really good examples, but it's just going to lead to maybe a potential good example. Like an old record player that like everyone's like, what are you doing with your record player, Bob? We're going to do a show. And you're like, no, it's my pedal box, bro.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I mean, a lot of people have used suitcases like the one that you're showing, David. Obviously people can't see this, but it's basically a suitcase. But a lot of people will use old, like the old 60s fancy looking suitcases as their pedal board and stuff. One of the things that I've always done my boards is all the pedals have Velcro on the bottom, and then the inside surface of the board is covered with like a auto upholstery stuff or auto carpet, I guess it's I don't know what you call it. And so the pedals will Velcro to that. That way, when I close the top, I can lift it up and carry it from the side with a big handle, or I can roll it, or I can flip it over and nothing's going to flop around. So, not that I have to keep all those same things in the next one, but there are some things that I figured out over time to make it easier. The big thing is it's just like so heavy. And so I don't know if, maybe
not make it out of MDF.
Yeah, maybe the majority of it out of aluminum would be you
could do like aluminum with angle iron and pop rivets, or if you ever got an aluminum welder, but you could certainly get away with pop riveting it together. If you had like aluminum panels with like an angle iron, but made in aluminum angle,
right. Yeah.
To connect the whole thing together, you'd end up with a box similar to what Dave just showed. In some configuration like that.
Yeah. Something to think about too is, when you're in a live situation, it's very dark and you can see the pedals to stomp on them, but when you want to actually go and turn a knob, it's almost impossible to see. I would maybe hook up like an LED strip into the 9-volt adapter, and so it's lit up.
Right.
And then you could also have that LED lights up I like to make stuff logo on the back of it.
That's a good idea.
You could wear it like a bandolier too. You could like wear it around you like a bandolier, like Chewy.
Yeah.
You could slap the different boxes as you need them.
The bandolier of rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is Chewy walk around with a bandolier of pedals?
No, I don't know what those are. Snacks, maybe? I don't know.
Are you stumped, Bob?
Well, he never uses them in the movies. I have no idea.
He has granola bars.
It's granola. That's what I was going to say too. All right, that was mine. Somebody else go.
Well, I'm working on Witchblade 3 right now. I'm actually going to try and make that one of my next videos. Which I call it the Witch, as in which blade am I going to choose? Dave actually came up with that name. But it's going to be my third version of this Bowie knife, or camping knife, and the handle will be a multi-tool. And I've been going back and forth. What I got inspired to make a new one was because some of these knives you see now, they're just plasma or laser cut silhouettes of a knife and the silhouetted handle. And so what occurred to me was, what if that void in the handle, just a flat cut steel shaped knife, and the void in the handle, you could pop in the Leatherman Surge, and it pops right back out. So it's either in it or out of it, but the whole knife itself is always usable at any given moment, with or without the handle in it. Because in the past I've had it so the whole handle comes off and then it's kind of unusable. So it's just the blade or Leatherman. So this is the third incarnation, and I think it may be the most practical, I think, because you'll be able to use both tools at the same time, and it's not necessarily one or the other. So that's something I'm thinking about right now, and I haven't actually started it. So I just got the materials. I got an old design, but a brand new version of a SOG knife, and a new Surge from. Not Surge, but the Leatherman Wave, which is the smaller one. I forget what it is.
Not sure.
Yeah, you guys aren't Leatherman guys, right? You guys.
He is. I'm not.
And what is that?
I have the titanium charge.
I think it's about that size. That's the one that I'm going to be putting into the thing. Yeah, you have the newest version. That's sexy.
So what's the locking mechanism to keep it in the...
That's what, see, I've been trying to come up with a couple of ideas. I thought about it just pulling straight out, like imagine if you make a peace sign and then the thing slips in between your fingers. But those two would be two prongs of steel, but then it has a kind of an open tuning fork, which doesn't look good. So it would have to literally just like pop into the side of it. And until I actually get down to start like welding metal together, and when I say it'll be small, little like thin strips, tiny pieces of metal, until I really come up with a good solution. I have some ideas, but I don't know if they're going to work until I actually begin to just experiment. So that's what I'm going to have to really begin to do, is just like start cutting holes in metal and just trying to pop the Leatherman into it sideways and see what happens. The Leatherman itself has like kinds of like pockets and voids, so it's not like for instance, it's not like popping a domino into a perfectly square sleeve. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is this perfectly for the enjoyment of making it, or do you have dreams or goals of this being something that could be manufactured?
No, I want to manufacture it. I want to manufacture it. Yeah,
okay.
I've talked about doing a Kickstarter campaign with it. I've talked to a couple of factories, and they haven't really taken me serious. And every single day, I swear, I mean, almost every single day, I get an email or a comment on one of those two things that say, I would buy that if it was available. And I've talked to a couple of people about it. Actually, my brother hooked me up with a company that was very interested in making it, but they kind of lingered away. These things are so hard to get going. And so One thing I notice about a lot of successful inventors is that they made several versions of the idea that ultimately, including the Leatherman, has been, obviously a big inspiration. When you read about Tim Leatherman's, process and how he ultimately made the first one that worked, he made several different versions. And so I feel if I keep making versions of this thing, I will come to one that's like kind of the knock on the side of the head, like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't think of this sooner, that kind of thing. But so that's why I'm kind of going through the motions of kind of stretching my brain a little bit. I don't see the answer right in front of me. I personally like the idea of like the silhouetted handle with a hole right in the side of it, but I don't know the intimate details of that until I start working on it. So it's even hard to brainstorm about that, because unless I'm like down at the little nitty gritty of where that clip's going to be and how it's going to work and the tension on it. So
I really love the idea that this is the third version of it, and then you keep improving on it, because it's not something I get to do, or I might like. So for this corner cabinet that I made, I cut out a piece of cardboard to make sure it would kind of fit and it would look okay in the room and it would be the right size. But that's all I did. Once I was like,
that's smart though. That's I tell people that all the time. I'm like, just cut out a piece of cardboard, and put it there so you feel what the environment's going to be like. Smart.
But usually for me, once I make that is the last time I will make that thing. And then I move on. So I don't get to improve upon it. I can talk about it with my audience, like, oh, next time I would do this different, but I don't actually get to execute those new ideas.
What do you think the reaction would be if you did? Say in a couple of months you came back and I'm going to destroy this thing and make it better.
I don't know. I think there'd be good and bad. I think, well, I've already seen this, or there'd be like, that's so cool that you did that, nobody else is doing that. So I don't know. It's something to think about.
I tell my students all the time, if you make something, make it again and again and again and again. That's the only way you're going to get really good at it and start to solve a lot of problems you don't even realize are there. It's so simple. My dumb little ice pick that I made 500 of now. Every single time I make it, I figure out a new shortcut that I didn't already use or didn't already think of. And just as simple as this, and I never put this in a video or anything. So I take the ice pick and I put a notch in it so that the ring could fit into the end to solder. So I take the tube is like a 1/4 inch diameter and I put a notch right in the end of the tube. And the cutting leaves a whole bunch of burrs. So I put them in a box and then I take the box over to the sander and then I sand each one of them. It occurred to me a couple of weeks ago that if I just glued a strip of sandpaper around the chuck of the lathe, so I took a 1/2 inch wide strip of sandpaper and glued it around the chuck of the lathe. So now I put my notch in the end of the brass tube and all the burrs are on it. And then I just literally move it a couple inches over to the chuck and rub it on that strip of sandpaper that's spray glued around the chuck. And now it wasn't until I made my 5th batch of 100 till I realized, oh, this saves me a step of having to go over to the sander.
Right.
And I'm using electric that's already running. So all I'm doing is like I switch out one, and before I put it in the box, I just sand the burrs off it against the chuck of the lathe that has a 1/2 inch strip of sandpaper glued to it around the whole circumference of it. And so unless you keep doing things over and over and over again, it's hard to see all those little improvements as you go. So for instance, I made the video of me making the ice picks, the very first video, which is the worst version of me making those 100 ice picks. Even though every little thing I do is a very slight improvement, but when you watch that video of me make those 100 ice picks, my process now is completely different and a lot more streamlined and goes a lot faster. Ultimately, I'll have them manufactured, but until I can figure that out, which is a whole nother story, I'll keep making them by hand.
That's interesting, because when you made your first batch of that, you probably thought, based on the experience of the first batch and the process that you had there, you probably thought, I don't really want to make another 100 of these because the process is going to take as long as it took the first time. But then when you did the second one, it was faster. And then you probably thought the same thing, but then the third one ended up being faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
I mean, it's obviously paid me fairly well. I mean, I'm making a lot of money on those things, but the work is also quite tedious. And it's, it's focused work. It's kind of boring. But because I made so many of them, I've gotten so many little nuanced things to improve my workflow in other ways. So when I go to do something else, I was like, oh, I remember that I learned this when I did the ice pick. I've gotten good at soldering. I never really silver soldered, which is kind of an art form on itself. And now I'm really good at it. I know what to expect, how the heat's going to manipulate the solder flow, all these other things I didn't know when I did the first batch. So it's now instead of heating up one at a time, because I have the tip of the torch is basically sending energy out, and I'm focusing it on one solder joint at a time. Now I focus the heat on like 6 solder joints at the same time, so I get done that much faster. Because the torch is just blowing into midair anyway, so I have like 6 other pieces right behind the first one I'm doing. So I solder the first one, move it, the second one, move it, the third one, move it, the fourth one, move it. So I'm soldering like into like a a row of them.
That's
I have
brilliant.
I have a chock of steel, and I have holes drilled in the steel, so I just set up 6 in a row, like lollipops, and I just move them out of the way as I solder them. But, these are things that you don't know, you can't think of until you do it 500 times. And so that's what I'm trying to do with the Witchblade. I'm going to I actually started making a third one. I Instagrammed about it a little bit about a year ago, but I didn't like the way it was going, so I kind of abandoned that route. So now I'm doing this other one, which I think is much more practical. And the idea of having the frame of the handle always there, I think, is more saleable. Because, imagine if you're changing the brake light on your bicycle, your blinking light, you're changing with your Leatherman, and you're out on the trail, and then all of a sudden a Bobcat shows up. And you got to
throw the bike at him, duh.
No, and the Bobcat, wants a piece of your bologna sandwich. And you got to say, hold on, let me put the Leatherman back onto the big knife so that I can cut you a piece of my bologna sandwich before you kill me.
What a weird scenario.
Now you can leave the Leatherman with the screwdriver sticking out and your battery pack on the ground, and you could say, "Give me just a second, Mr. Bobcat," and you could pull out your knife with the wireframe handle or the steel frame around the the space that the Leatherman would take up, and cut him a piece of sandwich, and then he'll go on his way without ripping your arm off.
You know what I get out of this, Jimmy? You really should stop eating processed meats. They're really not good for you.
No, so there's a scenario. I mean, that's that was born out of a comment where someone's like, "Yeah, but now the blade is useless." So, that's again, just we'll see where it goes. I'll make 4 and a 5. Hopefully one of these days somebody will manufacture it.
And you should definitely cut a piece of bologna in the video and give it to Spike.
Sure. Spike doesn't like bologna. I give him a food every now and again. He just looks at it and like turns his head and goes back to sleep.
What?
What's wrong with that cat?
Yeah.
Taylor says he eats like a Purina cat chow. It's like Doritos. It's like he only likes Doritos. He doesn't like real food. She's like, that's because the previous owner only fed him Doritos. That's what he likes. He give him real food and he just looks at it. Now he's finally eating raw meat. Taylor's got all the animals on a raw meat diet, which is apparently really good for them. But prior to that, like you'd give him raw meat and he would it would just sit there and all of a sudden there'd be flies on it. But now he's eating it finally. I guess it's either starve to death or eat the raw meat. So now he's eating the raw meat. So
crazy.
Yeah. So that's where I'm going with the Witchblade 3. We'll see what happens. But
cool. David, what about you? You got an idea?
So I have a couple things. I was telling both of you before we hit record, like I'm not sure I have really good ideas or they're really undeveloped. So maybe you guys can help me along here. But so I have my workbench. It's something I did not photograph or film, and I want to show how I made it. So I've thought of a couple different ways to do that, and one is to do a miniature version of it, and one is to do a completely animated from like a SketchUp drawing pieces and I talk over it. Or I could actually build a new workbench and try to get rid of another one. But I don't really have room to build another workbench and then try to find somebody to take the old one or the new one. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on how to make something without actually making it. Yeah.
Have you watched ClickSpring?
Yes. Not every single video, but I love a lot of his videos. Yeah.
Once in a while, what he does, which is incredible, which, I wish I had the patience and the know-how to do it. He has like a real object that dissolves into a CGI version of it in the same exact position. Now, I don't know if he takes the photograph first or if he builds the CGI and then composes it, but they literally blend right into one another. So it looks exactly like the object, and then it cross-dissolves into the CGI version of it on his computer screen. Then it starts moving around. Mm-hmm. So I while you were talking, I pictured your your table and you explaining the CGI version, and like it fades in and out of like the real situations of what you're explaining. So you go from the CGI to the actual cross dissolve of what you built.
I like that. And Frank Howarth does a little bit of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good.
At first, I wanted to do just a miniature version of it, like a quarter scale or something. But then Frank Howarth actually came out with a video where he showed some sort of hoist type thing that he has in his shop.
Yep.
And it was all animations, and it was all just graphics and how it was built. And I thought that was a really interesting way to show how that was done. Wondering how I can do that. So I don't know, just something that I think about. I have a bench, and it was cheaply made, and it's like super crazy sturdy. It's super heavy, and I think some people would get some good use out of it, but I don't need to make another one. So
if you made it at like, instead of like tiny scale, let's say you made it like 1 inch equals a foot, or like say 2 inches equals a foot, so it'd be like a half. I'm like holding my hands apart at like 30 inches. If you made it like that would be pretty hefty, and then you might actually be able to like give it to a nephew or a niece or something.
I've also, you know what, you just sparked an idea, because I see a lot of hand tool users. They have their workbench, but then they have a bench that they put on top of their bench to bring their work up to like head level, so you're not bending over. So I'm wondering if like the little mini bench could be attached to the bigger bench and bring the work up to my.
Yeah,
like instead of a standing desk, standing bench,
a standing bench. Oh, this is why I love brainstorming sessions.
You could do a sideways one too, so you never have to get out of bed. And all the tools are magnetized to the top of it, so they don't fall on your chest.
Just you have to buy magnetic wood to be able to make that work, which is it's a little more expensive, but you can get it. I mean,
you could have all the tools hang from strings in the ceiling, so if you need them, they're just kind of like in place. Right into the table. Yeah, but it's you guys know I love Marco Trenese. I think I'm saying his name correctly. The guy on Instagram who makes all the miniature stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met him quickly at WIA, and he has these little tiny. He makes literal, actual, perfect things tiny, and he has little tiny workbench. He has little hand planes, anvils, all like exactly accurate, but just tiny. So it just reminds me of what he's doing. But not he doesn't do it. He does it like in a scale like I'm like holding my fingers apart. That would be about 7 or 8 inches. That's about how big he would make his bench.
You own one of his pieces, don't you?
No, I wanted to, and I offered to buy it right there at the show, and I've emailed him several times, or I followed up and commented on some of his stuff, and he hasn't hit me back. So maybe he doesn't want me to have one. I don't know. I actually was very eager to buy one, but we did not. He did not follow up with me. So
he didn't want you to spray paint it white.
That's probably it. No, I would love to own one of his pieces, and if he's listening, please reach out to me, because I don't. I feel like I'm annoying him at this point, so I don't want to hit him anymore.
So with your bench, David, is there no way that you could get rid of the one that you have before you built? Like as incentive to build the new one, but also to give you the space to build the new one?
Yeah, I suppose that's possible. But I'm really attached to my bench, and it's a beast. And it would have to, the top would have to come back off and then be carried up these basement stairs. This is something I don't even want to think about right now. It's my baby. It's one of my first woodworking projects, and I use it in every single project now.
Gotcha.
Why don't you make one as like a giveaway or something? It's the thought. Make it exactly the same, and make it. If you make it exactly the same, there's no doubt it's going to be improved one way or another, and then sell it
or burn it.
Make it and sell
that would be amazing.
You could title the video "How to Make a Bonfire," and it's you building a bench and then carrying it up into your backyard and burning it.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Anyway, that's not a good idea. You guys want to do any more? Let's do a couple more.
Yeah, you do one. I got another good one, I think.
All right, so I'm trying to think of. I'm going to build a welding cart / table, because I don't have a welding table, and the cart that I have my welder on can't hold the tank for it. So I want to combo those two things together. And I've actually already done the model for it. Like I built it in SketchUp. It's fully done. The top is going to be, instead of a solid piece, it's going to be the rectangular tubing, that's like a 1x2 or 1x3 or something. Mm-hmm. So some strips of that with a space in between them so that I can put clamps down if I need to clamp something to the top. So that's the idea. But then when I got it all designed, I was like, it's functional. and it should work, but it just doesn't have a thing. You know what I mean? I kind of wanted it to have a thing. So, Jimmy, with your more longer experience of welding, and what's a thing that would be like, oh man, if I had that on a portable welding table?
The one thing that, whenever it comes to welding, the one thing that is the most clumsy thing, and I can't believe it, I've even tried to have a dialogue with my friends at Lincoln about it, and they kind of picked up on it as me just giving them a couple of tips, but I was trying to tell them they need to revolutionize cable management. And that's the most important, annoying thing when you get into welding is cable management, because every welder's you got the air hose, you got the ground clamp, and you got the plug. And in some cases you have one more thing. And it is such a pain in the butt. They're all over the place. You're stepping on them. They get entangled on everything. And so they do no thought process into cable management. And I show in one of my videos that I make this thing that goes over the machine and then comes back up, so there's a hook on the left and the right side. I even showed that to a couple of welding companies, like, hey, we should manufacture this. And they're like, oh, that's so cute. Nice little job, boy. And they tap me on the head. And they say, oh, that's really interesting. But meanwhile, they give you a welder with nothing to do with the cables except drag them around. And I just bought a welding cart, and there's no hooks on the welding cart to hang the cables. They just expect you to wrap 3 cables in the same direction on the same handle, and then they all get tangled up together. So if there was a welding table that, if you had a dedicated machine underneath it, dedicated to the location of where the machine is, and a way to keep the cables, in line, like one should be completely on that side of the work and the other one should be completely on the other side of the work. That's a thought.
What about like a hose reel? Would that help the process at all?
Not necessarily. I mean, only if you were doing really, like if you were welding from a truck in a basement, for instance, which they have, like if you're going to be welding, like doing boiler repairs, which you see around New York City all the time. And these guys have these long hoses that have to go to where they're working. But if you're just in a shop situation, even just like 3 or 4 loops on the hook is enough to keep them out of your way. But they don't think of that. They don't consider that. Most of the cables are about 9 feet long. And like I said, 2 or 3 loops on a hook is really all you need to manage them. But they don't even think of that. They just get tangled everywhere. So maybe, for instance, like if you were going to have a dedicated machine, you could also have the ground cable just bolt right onto the, have like a bolt. But then again, guys are punching their iPods going, no, you need the clip to put on the machine, on the thing sometime.
Well, that's the entire cart will be steel. And so the entire thing would be for grounding. So I was just going to clip it anywhere. Yeah, but that makes most sense. There's also, so the welder will be on the bottom tray, and then there'll be a shelf right above it, and then maybe 6 or 8 inches, and then the top surface. And so that shelf, the idea is to have a couple of grinders and maybe another tool or 2 that I would use, while in the process, have them on the shelf, have all of those wires running to a central plug. So all the stuff is plugged into one box, and the cart has one tail going out that I would plug into the wall. So it's interesting to think about cable management, because I'm actually adding to the problem by doing that.
No, that's good though.
There's going to be more of them to manage.
No, that's good. If you have a plug at the front of your machine that can handle everything, everything goes to like a 25 amp circuit somewhere. That's actually a pretty good idea. Yeah, and then the idea is, you said you were going to use like box tubes to make the top up. Yeah. And how many in a row and how close together would they be?
I got them about an inch apart, and I think there's 6 maybe, and they're 1 by 3. No, I don't remember the size that I ended up on. But I'm trying to keep the whole thing pretty narrow, and so the top is maybe 14 or 15 inches wide, and then I don't remember how long. But I actually wanted a larger welding table than that, so I was trying to think of a way to have an extension to the table that would fold down on one side of the cart. So you could fold it up, and then you would end up with like a double wide top to the width of the cart. But then for that to be really effective and worthwhile, it has to be level. The entire top has to be level. So anytime you move half of it, you're going to run into that not being perfectly level.
You know what I just envisioned, which makes it slightly more complicated, but it's all a matter of figuring it out. Is if you have like 1 inch by 1, the things are like, I'm weaving my fingertips together right now on camera showing them. If you had the table just woven together and it just slides like this and then slides apart. So if you, you know what I mean? You have like, let's say you just have like a bunch of 2x4s and every other one is connected to one end and the ones in between those are connected to the other end. You can compress them down to say 4 feet or pull them wide apart to 8 feet.
Oh,
not
that's great.
not necessarily 8 feet, because they would need to overlap at one point to stay.
That's
together.
cool.
Huh.
You'd have to figure out how to also manage the surface of that so that it's flat.
Right.
But then once
There's like bolts running through all of it, and so it all rests on these and it stays level. And then there's a couple ways to do it, so it doesn't come all the way undone. Yeah.
Ew, I like that. That's
a good
awesome.
idea.
It's cool. You think we're going to win the prize?
There's a prize?
No, like those idiot teams on the TV shows.
Oh, yeah. Oh, speaking of welding, not that anybody cares about this at all, but I did go to Harbor Freight and pick up the portable bandsaw that you
right
talked
on.
about. So
have you
I
used
have
it?
one of those now. Not really. I like cut the end. I put a good blade on it and then cut the end of a piece just to make sure I had it like running right and the blade was on correctly, and it cut metal. So
It's the one the one like this, right?
Yeah.
Is it
you hold it with 2
mountable
hands.
where you could have it like a woodworking bandsaw? Is it mountable?
I didn't see any mounts like on it made for that, but I'm sure there's a way to do it.
Mine, the one I have is by DeWalt, and it has like a big sturdy hook on it that's like meant to hook on a ladder or something wherever you might be working. And I have that hook just grabbed inside of a vise. So yours is probably like a knockoff. I've been wanting to buy that one, but I'm assuming it's just a knockoff of a couple like the market ones, like Milwaukee makes one and then the one DeWalt makes. So it might have, does it have that hook on it that you noticed?
Not that I noticed, but I haven't really looked hard. I mean, I took it out, put a blade on it, and that's it.
That hook is intended to be strong enough to carry it. So
Gotcha.
I just have it grabbed by the hook and it holds it right where it needs to be held. So
Awesome. All right, who's next? Yeah.
We came up with an idea when we were at Ord Camp, and I don't know if I talked about this. Remind me if I did, and I'll go to the next one. But did I talk about making a cement tabletop?
I don't think so.
We talked about it at Ord Camp, but I didn't talk about it here. Yeah, I want to make a trestle table, like a classic trestle table. And instead of just doing a traditional wood top, I wanted to do a cast cement top. And that's not something I'm going to be able to do until the summertime because I'll do it upstate. But I've been thinking about casting the tabletop and making patterns in the mold so that those images show up in the final cast. I don't know exactly what yet, but I just think it would be an interesting process. And how I make the mold and what I make the mold out of. And I mean, obviously it might be just plywood. Maybe I'll just make it out of wood so it looks like it's wood. In the hotel I stayed in over the weekend, the ceiling of every room was plywood molds. Like whenever they cast the building was cast in concrete. And the ceiling was sheets of plywood, but the impression of the plywood is now in the concrete ceiling. So I could make like a wooden tabletop mold, fill it with concrete, and then when I break the mold away, it would basically be a big slab of concrete that has wooden grain in it.
Could you weather the wood so the grain kind of stands out a little bit more too?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Seems like
absolutely.
you'd have to. I mean, like how much detail would concrete be able to grab there?
Believe it or not, quite a bit. It depends on the slurry that I use to put in there. Obviously, you have the cement that we walk on, which is a little bit more, has more like aggregate in it. It could be less. I see some concrete stuff. It's like beautifully smooth, polished stuff. So it'd be probably someplace in between. Taylor's done a lot of research on this, so I'm going to ask her to help me with that. We might even do that project together. But, what the mold looks like. And I guess if I make the end of the molds, I want it to look like end grain at the end of the tabletop. So like the end of the molds would be chunks of end grain. So it'd end up with that end grain molding into the wood. That makes sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's an awesome idea.
Yeah, so I'm actually just thinking of this right now while we talk. I didn't really think of it until we began talking about it. The idea of making the cement look like a big chunk of maybe a few pieces of wood pieced together, or maybe one big piece of wood. And then you would get like the type of plywood that you would like use for sheeting, not something that's not like a piece of birch where like the grain is really smooth. You'd want something with like a deep grain.
Yeah.
Or maybe even OSB, that oriented strand board, that ugly stuff. It looks like hay compressed together.
Yeah.
It looks really ugly, but it might be interesting to take that pattern and have it in a cement tabletop.
I wonder if a piece of pressure treated would give you a bigger difference in grain height.
Yeah, that pressure treated always has like a deep grain because it's really never meant to be looked at. It's always meant to just be like undercoating.
Right.
Yeah. Slow process. And then I'm thinking the trestle itself might end up being traditional woodwork, but it might be interesting if it was traditionally joined like wood but made out of metal.
Or concrete. Concrete dovetails? Do it, man. Come on.
That would mean I'd have to make the mold dovetails, and I don't like doing that. I'd have to make them twice.
Has anybody ever done concrete dovetails though?
I just saw on Pinterest there was it was concrete on one side and wood on the other. So
I think I saw that. Was it a notch together or was it a dovetail together? It was more like square notches.
You know what? Maybe it was like a finger joint type thing.
Because I think I saw it. It was like three notches, and the cement one stuck up in the middle of the wood one. So the two sides of the table was cement. That's the one I saw. I'm looking up.
Well, and like you could do like for the trestle table, you could do the through mortises, you know, and then where you put the wedge in. But you could experiment with, you know, like you said, metal or a concrete in the through mortise, so it peeks out on the opposite side. Mm-hmm.
There's a bench made with cement dovetails on Pinterest. It's actually pretty pretty. It's pretty ugly.
pretty.
It's I meant to say
pretty.
It's pretty
Jimmy really
ugly.
likes it.
It's pretty ugly, is what I meant to say. But
that's one of our listeners.
It's done well.
Cool, David. You got another idea?
So yes, as we mentioned earlier, the sit stand thing for the bench. One of the ideas I had written down was actually a really simple sit stand desk for the music room, because I need someplace. Sometimes I want to sit down and work on music, and sometimes when you're playing guitar, you want to have your laptop or whatever at a higher height, I guess. But I haven't thought about it too much. I haven't figured out how to have the table move up and down. There's not going to be anything permanently on there. It's like so monitor speakers are actually going to be on stands somewhere else. And I just want something that can be easily move up and down. And I've seen the crazy woodworking videos that has all the X hinges and everything that moves, and I don't want anything that complicated. So I don't know if you guys have any ideas for a quick, simple, but decent looking bench.
There was one on, there was a Kickstarter several years ago, and a friend of mine sent it to me asking me if I could make it for him, because it was so simple construction wise. And I don't remember the name of it at this point. I may be able to look it up. But the thing about it was that the side panels had a groove cut out, and the groove was never straight up and down. So it like went from an angle from the bottom, angled up towards the front, and then there was like a little notch. So basically you would lift the table piece had, little knobs on the ends that stuck into this groove. And so when you lifted it up, you're never carrying the full weight of the table. Part of it was leaning on the slant of the groove.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not really sure how to say that. And so that helped you lift it. And then once you got it to the top, you kind of brought it over a little hump, and it rested in a thing. So you could do that, but then you could also add another dimension to it, counterweighting whatever weight the actual thing that you were lifting was. Maybe you could do some counterweight off the back. So as you're lifting, whatever weight you're trying to lift is being counterweighted, so you're not actually personally lifting the weight of the entire thing.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how that would work, but you could drop a weight off of the back of the table that it was hanging onto pretty easily to help with that.
I'm drawing a picture of what you should do.
Jimmy's got it figured out. But other than that, I don't know. Some of them are very complicated, but
I see. So it's got 4 hinges that works kind of like a square turns into a
parallelogram.
A diamond shape. Yeah, a parallelogram.
So if you take like 4 ice cream sticks and you lay them into like a box grid, right? I don't know how this is going to. I'm in deep waters right now. I'm not sure I'm going. If you take 4 ice cream sticks and you connect them together on all 4 corners, so you have a box, so to speak, and then that would be a parallelogram. And if you take one of them, let's say you're looking at them in the upright on the left side and the upright on the right side, take the one side of the box and draw it really long so it goes to the ground, and then do the other side of the box and draw it long so it goes up in the air. And so then you have like a parallelogram with like a tabletop on one side, and the other side becomes the base. Of course, it would need to be weighted. And then if you took the bottom one really long and put a weight on the outside of it, that would be a counterweight. We're going to have to show a picture of this.
Yeah, we'll take a picture of this and put it in the notes.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense when I'm looking at the picture, but obviously I don't think that would make any sense for somebody listening. But.
Well, people who play with ice creams know exactly what I'm talking about. People that play with ice cream sticks, I should say.
Here's a fun fact. I hate wooden spoons and ice cream sticks. I hate the feeling of wood on my lips. Ugh. It just gives me the chills.
Well, there's an episode title. I hate the feeling of wood on my lips. So another thing that you might, just a mechanism that I've been thinking about lately that may work there somewhere. I don't know, maybe not. So I want to build an arm, like a microphone arm, so that the microphone that I'm using right now can be on this arm and I can just push it out of the way instead of it being on a stand. You know, like a DJ would have a microphone with a flexible arm. And so I've looked at how those are made, and they're just like the lamps, like a desk lamp you would have when you were a kid, you know, this telescoping lamp or whatever. And the corners or the joints of those, and some of the ones I've seen are a triangle. And then, so off of the top of a triangle, there's two pieces coming off. Off the bottom of it, there's one piece coming off. And then on the other end, those pieces are all connected to a similar triangle. And so basically, when you want to move the pieces, the two triangles on the ends rotate in the same direction. And so as they turn, the top cross piece is moving faster in one direction than the bottom. And that's how they're able to move at the same time, because the triangles are turning. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to explain that in a way that makes sense. But anyway, if you look at the way that those lamps work and the way the joints work, and there's springs connecting all this stuff to hold tension.
I got to see a sketch of that.
But if you look at the way that works, it's a way that you can have flexible joints that hold their position, and you may be able to do something with that same idea of lifting a table. You know,
I just thought of something else too. Jimmy, you remember that when that company sent us those TV lifts?
Yeah.
I still have mine. I wonder if I can make a standing desk with one of those.
Oh, that's cool. The other thing I thought of too
out of
is
a TV.
In New York City, all the time I get to see garbage every day, and a lot of times people throw out chairs with those pumps. You know, the pump that where you sit up and the chair goes up in the air. Mm-hmm. You sit down, and he's doing it right now. I see them in the garbage all day long, and I always see them as like a valuable mechanism. And I never save them because I always know there'll be another one eventually. But I know they make tables with them. Sometimes you see a table with that, so that's another simple thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
You could actually take that pump and use it as in a parallelogram design. You could use that pump as the cross member. So you get a lot less movement, but a lot more movement throughout the parallelogram. So the parallelogram's going like this, but the extension. The diagonal, you could use that pump in the diagonal of it.
You're making the popsicle stick get longer and shorter.
The parallelogram, but the diagonal gets longer and shorter, and that's where you put that pump thing that you steal out of the chair.
Gotcha. Across from corner to corner.
Yeah, diagonally through the parallelogram. Because that when you move the parallelogram, the diagonal gets longer and shorter, depending upon which one it is.
Crazy.
We're definitely going to win first place. As long as we keep getting along.
Yeah. Okay, let's describe another thing that's really, really hard to visualize. Ready?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's stop there with ideas.
All right.
That's a lot of ideas. Yeah. What have you guys been watching? Can I tell you what I've been watching? I'm going to go first.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been going first all day.
That's right. The new video by OK Go.
You ruined it. That was mine.
That's why I went first.
I quit.
That's why I went first. I knew somebody else was going to say it. It's okay. We can both talk about that one because it's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. Have you seen it, Jimmy?
No, I'm looking it up now.
Okay, so this band, always every single one of their videos is something that nobody else has ever done. It's always over the top, really interactive, usually one shot, like one take for the entire thing. Not always, but they're crazy. So in this newest one, they shot the whole thing in a single shot in a plane. While it was doing
I know exactly what you're talking about.
the zero gravity thing. So
I saw it on CNN.
It's crazy. Mm-hmm. And when you watch it the first time, it's like, oh, that's really cool. Wow, nobody's ever done that. And then you watch it again and you think about all the things that could go wrong at every single stage of it.
Yeah.
And how much it would take to reset this, because they're like popping balloons of paint and there's stuff flying all over the place and there's people and there are so many different things that could ruin a take, and they would have to fully reset. And the whole thing is happening in a plane.
Yeah.
That's diving, you know. And
I read an article on the making of it, and from what I understand, when that plane is in that free fall, that only lasts 30 seconds or something?
Yeah, it's very short, yeah.
And so what they would do is when it reaches the bottom of that free fall, they would all just hold still. And then when the plane would go back up and then drop again. And so it was, you wouldn't even, and it's kind of like this, it has a very like low shutter speed. So it kind of has like a stop motion-y type feel to it. Yeah. And so you don't even see that where they cut out that
the interesting thing though is like you can watch if you watch the balls on the floor. So at one point they open these suitcases and there's balls flying around, like different colored balls, and they're all over the place. And then you can tell the plane hits that thing where it has to start climbing again, and the balls all fall to the floor, and then they're rolling to the back. But you're paying attention to stuff in the foreground, so you're not really thinking about the fact that now the plane is climbing, and then they go back, and all of a sudden the balls are in the air. It's awesome. It's so good.
It's really well done. Yeah.
And I love that the fact that like a band is, you know, they're making videos for an album that came out like well over a year ago, but they're going above and beyond to make something visually that's, you know, like more than it needs to be to support the music. It's just for the sake of doing it. It's pretty awesome. Anyway,
it's funny. I think you brought up that subject a couple of weeks ago. Did you not? In the podcast?
I don't know.
I thought we talked about whatever that is called when the plane falls.
Oh, yeah, we did. That's right.
Yeah. And then like a couple days later, I see this video. I'm like, oh, that's so weird. And then Casey Neistat had a video a couple weeks ago where he was on the plane, and he was discussing how it's like a lot of people get sick because you're free falling, and then you go back up, and then you're free fall again. And they worked on this video for 3 weeks, like practicing and getting set up. Like, could you imagine doing that for 3 weeks?
No.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm watching little pieces of it now while we talk. It's insane.
Cool. So that's my recommendation.
And so that's gonna be mine too, because I'm going through my history here, and I'm like, nothing is as good as that. But I'm not the biggest fan of OK Go. There's a couple songs that I like, but all their videos are just so over the top. I just love like the creativity and the brainstorming sessions that they must have with these filmmakers. It has to be amazing to attend, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure, like Jimmy said earlier, you throw out the ridiculous idea that can't be done, but maybe that triggers something that can be done. That's got to be so fun to be in that room.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was listening to a podcast. I might have mentioned last week. I think I mentioned Barry Katz's podcast, and he had on Pete Holmes, who's a funny comedian. And one thing I never knew about Pete Holmes is that he does this Batman mock series on College Humor. Has anybody seen it?
I don't think so.
I think so.
It is. I watched it the other night. I never heard of it, and so he on collegehumor.com, which you guys everybody knows College Humor. You could go to that. That could be my recommendation. But specifically on College Humor, look up Batman on collegehumor.com. And Pete Holmes plays Batman, and it's just a complete parody of Batman done dead seriously, but with the most absurd, ridiculous humor, vulgarities, really super funny. I was in the other room cracking up laughing, and Taylor comes running in. She's like, I never heard you laugh so hard recently. What are you laughing at? And it's Batman wrestling somebody, and I can't say any of the stuff he says on this thing. It's super vulgar, but super funny. So look up Pete Holmes as Batman on YouTube. I'm looking at one video now. It's got 20 million hits. So I totally went over my head. I totally missed it. These videos are a few years old. So
he's got a podcast too.
Yeah. I haven't listened to it yet, but I heard it. I heard it's pretty good.
Yeah. I've never heard it either.
Yeah. But him as Batman is absolutely hilarious.
Awesome.
Check it out. Well,
before we go, I guess, I want to say thanks to everybody from Patreon that's supporting us. Especially, we have some new patrons this week, but so especially John Cornwell, Luis Gonzalez, Sean Petty, and Jeremy White. They're our top supporters.
Thank you, guys.
We're very gracious for that support over there. So if you want to support the show and help us out, you can go to patreon.com/makingit, or you can just share the show. That's cool too.
Yes.
That is cool. Yep. And if you have things that you want to want us to talk about, you can tweet at us at Making It Podcast. this is totally unimportant and unrelated, but I thought of it. Instagram now will let you have multiple accounts, and you can switch between accounts within the application, which is only interesting to me for the fact that we have an Making It Podcast Instagram account, but we never use it because nobody's ever logged into it because we have our own.
Yeah, they're rolling that feature out. I don't have that feature yet.
Oh,
because I have multiples and I'm waiting for it. Every day.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, so anyway, we'll have that. So next time, like when we're in, where are we going to be? Jimmy and I are going to be in Charleston this weekend.
That's right.
We'll post some pictures on the Making It Podcast. And then when we're in California for Maker Faire this year, we'll post some pictures there. So go ahead and follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Making It Podcast.
Right on.
Cool.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you all very much.
We'll see you next time.
Later.